Welcome, everybody, to Resilient Now podcast. We're so happy you're here. Um, we have a really fun guest today. I'm really excited to have him. He's in the entertainment world. He's an attorney in Beverly Hills in entertainment. So he's going to tell you a very kind of cool resilient story. So I'm very excited to hear him. But before we start, I want to welcome everybody. And the reason we're here is, if you're going through anything in the world, like anything that's hard that life presents you, sometimes you just, when that is just beginning or just in the middle of it, you just feel desperate or you don't have any hope and you just confused and it's sometimes it's just really painful. There's so many different scenarios. So I'm trying to bring you somebody. My goal is to have a speaker for you that has gone through what you're going through right now, but isn't on the other side of that, has already gone through that. And you can listen to that person and you can get inspired. You can feel hope maybe you want to get in touch with that person. And if you do, just email me, on the website. So this is for you to connect you to somebody that, so hopefully you can hear them once or 10 times, whatever it is that you need. So Aditya, hopefully I won't kill your name. I'm so scared. I'm so glad you're here. So I want to ask you a question. What does resilient now mean to you?
I want to thank you for having me, Liliana, first of all, and to be able to speak to your audience. It's a wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jillian, now, when I first heard about your amazing podcast, those words did stand out to me. To me, it reminded me of moments when I had to dig deep and find out what I was made of. And, you know, at times in my life, especially when I was younger, that was a challenge that was a little scarier. But I have found that over time, my resilience, as it builds on itself, there's a lot more faith involved whenever I have to meet a challenge. So uh, today, resilient now is feels like an opportunity, and that's only because I feel like I've gone through a series of challenges in life, and whether they didn't always turn out great immediately, or um, you know, in the way that I might have imagined it. But I have found that we're all still here. I'm still here, and I'm still hopeful, and I still have my ability, and it really makes me feel grateful that this life just continues on, and we have the opportunity to do more.
Thank you. It's very interesting. Aditya was referred to me. I was going to do some business with him. I don't know, maybe at some point we will or we won't. But I told him about the podcast and I said, was there something you would ever do? And he's like, absolutely. He so wanted to be of service. He's just, I mean, I don't really know him but he's just a good person. And he said, of course I'll do it. And I'm, so honored. And, you're in California, you're a busy, entertainment lawyer in Beverly Hills, and you're taking the time on a Sunday to do this to help somebody. And I just want to say sincerely, thank you so much. And let's start your resilient story. Let's go.
Okay. Well, I just want to add, so many people have helped me along the way, in many situations. So the opportunity to give back is something that I always look forward to. So the story that I wanted to talk about is, today it feels a little bit like a foregone conclusion, but at the time it was the biggest decision I ever had to make, and it involved a career change. And it might not be the most dramatic thing, but it careers are can be a big part of one's life, and they can have very dramatic effects. I'm the way I can only tell this story by giving you a little bit of background.
Of
Um,
course.
and as a child, I was very grateful, and I remain very grateful for the childhood I was given by my parents and alongside my siblings. And I'm big on family, but they were so supportive that I definitely took them for granted when I was younger. I was really gifted with a drama-free childhood and imbued with the value of hard work. And I'd say it's a good mix of like immigrant drive, that my parents immigrated to the United States, but also Midwestern American work ethic. I grew up
Mm,
in Michigan.
Okay.
And it was something that was just, it wasn't just expected of us that we would achieve and succeed, but it was sort of something that, like I said, it was the value of that was imbued in us because, especially the big life decisions we saw our parents make, traveling halfway around the world. And so that was just always part of the fabric and part of the mindset. And but at the same time, it's important to note I was a sort of child who was defiant, insistent on doing my own thing. Thought I knew better, and my parents gave me a little bit of freedom as long as I kept getting good grades to figure some of those things out on my own.
Mhm.
My I come from a family of physicians, and
Mhm.
I did go to college, and the default was a biology degree. They didn't have a pre-med degree, but the expectation was, these kids they'll end up in medicine,
Right.
and I did end up getting the biology degree because I did so many prerequisites in early classes that I wanted to get that in the end. But I also added a film degree after I made my first short film,
Oh,
which
wow.
you know my parents thought that was a very fun and creative endeavor, but they did not see what I was seeing, which was a potential career path.
Yeah.
And to my parents' credit, one MCAT prep class, that's the test to get into medical school. One class in, I called my parents. I said, I just can't do this.
Mhm.
As children, my dad would take my sister and I, and then also later our younger brother to the hospital. And my sister loved it. I didn't. And
Mhm.
I will say in college, I also volunteered at a children's hospital on a cancer ward, and it was very fulfilling. But I discovered very quickly that I didn't have the emotional temperament to for that sort of work, and
Not a lot of people
I'm
do.
not ashamed to say that at all. It was
Yeah.
very difficult emotionally. Frankly, it gives me that much more respect for physicians, in my family and everywhere. Um, but I think I had a little more creative soul and some of the emotionality that is uh, sometimes attached to that. But I'm sensitive that way.
Okay.
So I jumped after school. I headed out to Hollywood and quickly discovered I was a small fish in a big pond. I struggled financially, as many coming out here can. I found it
Mhm.
difficult to survive on entry level freelance work. The concept of freelance was very foreign to me. In fact, I was taken aside after one show ended that I was working on, and someone said, you seem like the person who wouldn't want to do this, but you should sign up for unemployment. That's how freelance works. And
Yeah.
I had a lovely call with someone at the California EDD, like the unemployment office, who said, look, your business is freelance driven, and this state is what it is in part because of the entertainment business. So don't feel ashamed, don't feel bad. You're
Right.
just starting out. She's like, I've seen what little you've made so far, getting a little bit in between. And I thought it was like really touching that this person thought to give me a pep talk on the other end of the phone. Like, don't
That's
don't feel
great.
ashamed. Just this is part of the drill here. Uh,
Mhm.
and I was grateful that it challenged a lot of my preconceived notions. Growing up in a family of doctors, it's like kind of just know one thing.
Right.
Um, but I will say, I also felt I need to shift my focus to more permanent work because that's just where I was more comfortable.
Okay.
I was more settled as a person in that situation, and frankly, I was grateful to find jobs where I could have regular income and focus on some creative endeavors on the side. Because after all, that's why I came to Hollywood, is to
Cool. Yes.
become the next Steven Spielberg. And
So
over
you were directing. Is that what you were doing on the side, the freelance? What exactly was it?
it's interesting because in school I directed shorts, and that was the initial idea. I literally came out to Hollywood with a reel, which included a 16 millimeter reel.
Right.
back in those days. But I'd go to interviews and no one wanted to see that. They're like, we just need someone who can drive videotapes from here to there.
Right.
Like,
Right.
yeah, that's fair. That makes sense. But I will say it was fun. It was I learned so much, of course.
Mhm.
And over time, though, as I'm getting older, as I'm looking at my career, like what is a career, and am I establishing a career? I was finding that I was only having incremental success in the creative endeavors. That wasn't becoming a career. So I focused a little more on the day job, hoping to turn that into a career. But unfortunately, by its nature, that sort of work was also limited in growth opportunities. And it's no one's fault. Nothing was promised about growth in that way. But I was a little naive. Frankly, there's no other way to look at it. And again, I'm not ashamed to say sometimes I learn as a defiant person. I insist on my way until I learn tough lessons sometimes. But
Right.
at this point in my life, I'm struggling with what I perceive as a lack of opportunity, despite my abilities. I'm seeing other people have success, and I'm happy for them, but feels unfair. I'm becoming a little bit focused on my own lack of success, and it's weighing me down. I would get jealous seeing they'd have these lists, 30 top 30 under 30, executives or whatnot, or 40 under 40. And I'd read these trying to figure out, like, well, what did they do that I didn't do? And a lot of times there was a mentor or something. Well, it's like, well, all right, that's not your fault. You didn't find this perfect mentor to bring you through. And on the creative side, I felt like I was cultivating this lottery ticket mentality, which was
Okay.
really just kind of dangerous. Like,
Yeah, for
you know,
sure.
imagine instead of just going to buy a lottery ticket for $1 or $2 or up to $5 now, I hear, you spend 2 years pouring your emotions into this screenplay or something, and then you can't get anyone to read it. The people who will read it, they're like, well, it's not really right for the marketplace right now. It was difficult. I chose a challenge, and I struggled with it. I had to admit that. And then ultimately, there were a number of things this led to me feeling I need to make a change. And there were a few reasons that going back to school was, in my mind, something, although daunting, it just felt like this might be the right move for me. Partially coming from a family where post, grad education is almost expected of everyone. I'd always felt like there was something that I hadn't accomplished in that way.
Okay.
But instead of becoming a doctor, I mean, we've already spoiled it. I became a lawyer,
Yes.
and I will say, or I chose to take the LSAT and go to law school. And when I told my parents, well, I'm thinking of law school actually, not med school. They're like, yeah, that sounds right. Our defiant son who has to do it his own way, who frankly loves to argue. My friends, they were like, oh my goodness, why? You should have gone to law school from the start. Like, you're the most annoying person to argue with, you
Yeah.
know? Um, and I found that going to law school, I was scared, and frankly, I really felt like I had I had definitively failed as I was driving out of Los Angeles the first time, and even though I knew it was going to be better and it was going to be exciting on paper, it really was. It was the culmination of a failure in my mind, and it was because I had spent the previous few years feeling the pressure and the pain of not achieving what I had set out to do. Um, Almost immediately, I was in a new location, so being away from anywhere familiar, I was surrounded by new people, and I was doing something very different. Now I'm in the intellectual academic boot camp of law school.
Of course. Of
Um,
course.
it was my left brain was was waking up again, saying, "Oh yeah, we're
It was
still here."
hibernation or something. Yeah.
That it in the end, I think I was the happiest person there, which most younger people would say that's not how I remember law school. But having gone through this internal painful struggle, um, even though it's in this context of work and career, it really was it was such an opportunity that, or it was such a different thing, such a change that I
Mhm.
needed more than I realized. And I was I couldn't stop smiling the whole time I was there. And the funny thing is, I actually went home to Michigan, which I'm grateful I got to spend more time in, in a city with my parents, and worked in a few different areas of law. And I remember there was one night that soon after my mother and I watched La La Land, and she said, "Do you miss Los Angeles?" And I was like, "Yeah, well, nah, I don't think so. Maybe a little bit." That I had to ask myself the question: do you deep down need to go back? Um, because that's the question I'd always answered as the defiant person. Is I don't feel like I chose Hollywood the first time. I felt like this is just a compulsion. You just have to go do it. And I didn't want to have a lingering regret. And when I spoke to a number of people that at that point in my life, I'd cultivated like this, community of people that I trusted, friends and so on, that, you know, I dug deep and I found out I don't ever need to go back to Hollywood, just emotionally, spiritually almost. I
Wow.
am content with where I am. And as soon as that happened, in the next 3 months, three opportunities arose where, like this intellectual property fell into my lap, and my landlord broke the lease unexpectedly. And I got, well, this wasn't that unexpected, but I finally got licensed in California. That said, I only took that exam because I was dating someone who was considering moving there, and we'd broken up since. But all these three things happened right then, and it felt like, all right, the universe is saying something here. And once I didn't have to go back, then I found, maybe I should try it. And it's been amazing because I have this new career, and even though I didn't expect it, everything I did before, especially the failures,
Mhm.
are now a base of knowledge
Mhm.
that I bring to bear for my clients to help
Yes.
them either avoid failures or to counsel them through situations. And even in ways that some of the things I did didn't work, I can advise clients about some of these, some of the reasons those things didn't work and why to try this instead, or so, so on and so forth. And at the end of the day, anything that involved situations that the my filmmaker clients especially haven't seen before is, sometimes a client comes in, it's a value to them, and sometimes a client comes in and says, you know you worked on bigger films than I did. And I'm like, yeah, but you're making the films and I'm here to help. That's it. I
Right.
now
Right.
now I love, I came out here the first time to be Steven Spielberg, and this time I came out just to help other people, to help people, bring their vision to the screen. And I love being a facilitator. I love being just just a piece in the puzzle, and but playing hopefully a valuable role in supporting art and the artist. So uh, this wasn't what I imagined when I walked out of that MCAT class, and you know dug deep for the strength to tell my parents I was going on this other career. But you know a couple decades later, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, and I couldn't be happier. And my left brain and my right brain get to work together. And for a know-it-all like any lawyer you probably know, like, we love using our whole brain to solve problems. And but yeah, it's I this is why when I heard Resilient Now, this is what I thought to share. That it was tough to make this decision, but in the end, it really worked out.
And just seeing it from my point of view, to me, none of those were failures. Those were lessons to get you where you needed to be. Like everything, to me, it sounds like you had to go through that to be where you are today. And so I don't see it as a failure at all. Like that's not how I see it. You can see it however you want. It's your story. But I mean, that is definitely resilient. So, going back to law school and having to use that, left brain. And so how did you get in the morning when you got up? What did you do? Like what self-talk did you give yourself so you could do that change? What did you do for somebody who's changing like that, a career or going back to school?
I'll say this. You're right. Today, I don't look at those experiences as failures, but I think part of it was in my life has been the greatest teacher that I didn't want, but I absolutely needed. And I identify myself as someone who was defiant or insistent on doing things my way. I think I just came out of the womb that way, to be honest with you. But I've had to be humbled by life in order to understand the value of humility, basically, and that not having things my way is sometimes the best thing that can happen to me.
Right.
Um, Not that that's actionable, but I will say in going to law school, before I made that decision to go to law school, I didn't really consult anyone
Mm,
about decisions, especially the biggest decisions of all. I felt like, well, that's mine to make. It's my responsibility. And frankly, if I ask someone and I didn't like their answer, I didn't take that very well. But I want to say that I was ultimately beaten down by and by no one else, by my own perception or my own expectations not being met to such a degree. And frankly, when you work very hard at something, you work for 10 hours at work and then come home and write for 3 hours. When you work very hard at something and you don't get any traction, it it can be demoralizing. And
yes,
over
disheartening.
time, that built up. So it was almost like a release valve. I don't really deserve credit except for when I was beaten down by my own emotions to the greatest extent. I did start reaching out to people. I did start talking to family, especially that I needed to make a change. And I kind of knew it would be the case. They were all so relieved that I was going to try something different. Um, and when they saw me grow through the process of law school and moving back and starting to practice law, uh, they felt very differently about me going back to Hollywood. They were like, "Well, this is a changed man from a boy to a man almost." That yeah, go back, give it a try, see what happens.
Oh my goodness, that's great. I love this is such a beautiful resilient story. You're going to help so many people because so many people are going through that, and just so many young people are confused. And so thank you for doing this. This is so special. Um, I wanted to ask you because this is how I've always finished the podcast. If you, because I like to finish in gratitude because I'm a firm believer if you're in gratitude, it's kind of hard to be in resentment or in anger or anything else like that. So I'd like to live in gratitude one day at a time, sometimes not perfectly. But what is your top gratitude right now? Right today, what's your top gratitude?
Ooh. It's interesting. I do a gratitude list every night
Okay.
in my head before I go to sleep, and over time, I've found that adding things that I wouldn't think to add to it,
Mhm.
it it's almost like a cheat code. It helps me to see gratitude in things um, that I wouldn't otherwise have thought. So in the end, the list becomes a list of everything I did in a day. What is my top gratitude today? Jumping ahead to that list, I'll say, I'll say, well, I just went on a hike with a friend, and I'm going to say friendship. That maybe that's not as topical, but it is another person that you can rely on. That I guess that comes back to my story. My friendship with this this gentleman, this friend is over 20 years. And I think the reason I thought of him is that he is one of the biggest supporters I have. In fact, actually, this ties in directly. When I was leaving LA the first time, he was so supportive. He's one of the people who kept in touch with me and was very positive about. I think he was sure I'd become an entertainment lawyer before I was. And when I first came out to LA again with my, being a member of the bar, he took me out to lunch and he said, "Let's make some movies together." So, um, yeah, that's friendship generally, and specifically my buddy Reggie.
My goodness, that's amazing. Thank you so much. And it sounds like one of your top gratitudes is having a gratitude list that you do every night. So there you go. So that's a good tip for people too. So thank you again for being here. And everybody else, we are here for you. I'm here for you. These speakers are here for you. If you want to get in contact with anybody, just email me at resilientnowpodcast@gmail.com. I'm happy to connect you to them. I'm so honored that you came. That was beautiful. And I want everybody to stay resilient now and make it a great day. And we'll see you next time. Bye.